FAO representative, a UN agency. You're also very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all your viewers, and thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, and happy to have you tonight. And of course, with me is Miss Agnes Chirabo, the Executive Director, Food Rights Alliance. Agnes, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, and good evening, viewers.
Very important. And of course, regular panelist, Ms. Sarah Virete, the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Karibu again.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Well, I'm happy to have all of you here. Thank you for joining me. And of course, to just let you know that this conversation is live on Facebook and YouTube. Our YouTube channel is UBC Television on YouTube. And of course, you also have UBC TV on Facebook. Now, join our conversation with our hashtag, which is UBC Behind the Headlines, on Twitter, to be part of the conversation and, of course, to go with us. Here is where we are today, of course, to talk about these issues of Uganda's food systems and building from where it will stop. Like I told you, Charles Odong Thorne is not with us tonight. We pray that he gets better and he gets well. I would be somewhere watching him and possibly also enjoying my favorite Chelsea with Villarreal for the UEFA the Super Cup, but duty called, and that is why I am here again tonight. Now, welcome to a conversation that will run up to midnight tonight. Another very lovely evening. Honorable Minister, you're very welcome once again, and I just hope that I should get this conversation with you right away to set the ball rolling to us. We know that Uganda's food system policies and policy frameworks are, of course, not performing as we possibly think in terms of ensuring that there is increased agricultural production, food security, and sustainable management of natural resources. What is happening, Honorable Minister?
Yes, thank you very much. I must say that currently, the food systems. Now, when we talk of food systems, we talk about food right from production. We go to processing, then you go to packaging until when it reaches the consumer. Now, I can say like now for this year, most of our food systems are traditional because you have still 52% of Ugandans still under subsistence farming. But that is better because we used to be at 68. So that shows you that we are, much as we are still not doing well, but we are improving. Now, currently, we have a challenge of still being dependent on rain-fed agriculture. We need to modernize, whereby whether there is rain or no rain, we should be able to grow our food. I can give an example of this year. I think we have had a crop failure for maize, especially the crop maize has failed in most parts of the country. And if we don't get the second season, believe me that next year we shall have a bit of challenges in terms of food. Now, as a Minister of Karamoja Affairs, and also to inform the public that I'm also holding the portfolio of Minister for General Duties, because my colleague is out on other personal issues. And as ministers, we have collective responsibility, whereby you step in. Now, for Karamoja, just for this season, we're already raising a red flag. And for districts like Kotido, the upper districts, Kotido, Kabong, Karenga, all those are already in the crisis. We don't have enough food. So 30% of the communities there don't have enough to eat. And more so the children, especially those under 5, we are registering more malnutrition, but although it is better, but we still have the malnutrition. Now, as a country, although we should be doing better, we are not yet there. And that's why when you look at our NDP 3, we are emphasizing agro-processing whereby if we handled food better, first of all, we need Ugandans to have enough food to eat, and it should also be of good nutritional value. It's not just a matter of eating food, but should be, look at this COVID-19 has taught us that you actually need to eat well to be healthy. So this now we have to emphasize to see that our communities or our households are fed better. Now we are, from the statistics which are released recently, 2 out of every 10 households have registered food insecurity. Now that is not so bad, because 2 out of 10, that is 20%. Though would want every Ugandan to have enough food.
Everybody should feed him.
Exactly. But slowly we shall be there. Now some of the challenges, like you said, we have drivers. Some of them are climate change and destruction of natural resources like forests and wetlands. You know, as I said, most of our agriculture is rain-fed. So without rain, you go into food insecurity because you will not harvest. And there you have communities going without food. As I speak now as a country, we are going to be, I think, we are coming up with a policy of being very strict on restoration of wetlands, and we are urging all Ugandans to take this seriously. It is our life, because 40% of the rainfall comes from these systems. If you look at Kampala now, we are receiving rain, but believe me, the other day when in Entebbe, it was not raining. You come to Kajansi, they have got some showers.
And actually, it rained yesterday in Entebbe, and it didn't rain in Kampala.
And it didn't rain in Kampala. So there are certain systems which influence rainfall. So 40% of the rainfall is influenced locally by the mountains, the wetlands, the forests, the rivers. Now, once we destroy them, now we don't have that. That's why some people, I used to be a Minister of Environment, and people would report to me, the other people got rainfall, this, for us we've not got. But to me as a scientist, I understood. When you go clearly to find out, you'll find that those communities destroyed their forest. Now they don't have rain. So you only have to rely on the rainfall, which has to come from the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic and the Pacific, and all those other bigger influences.
Honorable Minister, there are those natural issues or natural causes that even when you're a minister today or the other day, you may not decide where it rains and where it doesn't. But let me pick it up from where I talked about the NDP 3. Now, these are very good documents. When you look at the NDP 1, 2, and now we are on 3, I also want to take you back to our plan for modernization of agriculture, which was anchored on 7 pillars. And now we also bring in the parish development model, which is also still anchored on 7 pillars. Do we want to think that the parish development model was informed by the PMA that we have, and what assessments did we do with the plan for modernization of agriculture, as you also now chip in the development model?
Now, what I have to say that all those interventions at least contributed something. The plan for modernization of agriculture, the NDP 1 and 2, they created baselines. At least we are now better off. At least you have to agree that agriculture is now better. People are doing a lot of commercial agriculture, irrigation, which used not to be there. Now, when we are talking of a parish model, we now want to reach, you know, the NDP 3 is focusing on getting households out of poverty. That Ugandan at the village level, at the parish level. And that's where we are now focusing, at that parish level. If we can address that, then we can believe that Uganda can go into middle income status. Because we have put the infrastructure in place, you can see now roads, we are doing much better. We have all the other enabling factors to make the economy grow. So we believe that now when we target the human being, the person who has to drive this, by changing the mindset and having them to do the right things, we should be able to have them live a better life. First of all, they should have food. They should be healthy and live a good, have a good housing, I mean a good house, and that is what we want to achieve.
Okay, let me bring in Sarah here before I come to you, Antonio. Sarah, from your expertise as a constitutional governance activist, do you think we need to do a review on our laws and policies, or we think we are on the right trajectory legally?
You know, the problem with agriculture and food security in general is not the laws. If you look at our Vision 2040 and the drivers of the economy under NDP 3, agriculture is among the drivers of the economy because of the number of the people it employs. But the challenge with agriculture is lack of proper funding. Under the Maputo Protocol, we are supposed to have at least 10% of the national budget going into agriculture. This year's budget has improved a lot, actually has doubled in terms of agriculture as a sector from 930 billion to 1.5 trillion. But it is still 3% of the national budget. So we still have a gap of 7% as per our commitments under the Maputo Protocol. And if you go under NDP 3, if agriculture is really the driver for our 5-year plan, because there are 5 sectors, priority sectors, agriculture, tourism, you know, and others. But you give it 3%
of the national budget.
Of the national budget. Agriculture still employs 70% of the population, contributes 26% to our GDP, and contributes 50% to our exports. So are we putting money where our mouth is? COVID has proven that agriculture is the real economy, like the president called it. But how are we building resilience in this economy? And how can it be a driver at 3% funding? If you look at the impact COVID has had, especially the second lockdown that blocked inter-district travel, the farmers were unable to transport their produce beyond
from one to another.
Yes, beyond districts, and the prices, you know, it became low. But also, as per the report, you know, by the Ministry of Agriculture in April this year, 30% of Ugandans are food insecure. That is a very high number. So, what mitigating factors are we putting to make sure that we have at least 70% or more? You know, everybody should be food secure. And under the priorities, still under NDP 3, there is a priority on nutrition. Once you have, you know, we have 29% of people suffering from, you know, stunted.
Stunted people.
Yes, we have 50% people struggling with anemia because of poor feeding. You know, how are we balancing that? And how can we say that as a country we are okay in terms of food security with these challenges?
You talked about the 203 Maputo Protocol, which of course was reaffirmed in 2014-15 by now, the Malabo Protocol, the Malabo Declaration in Equatorial Guinea.
Yes.
And I would want to think that this could be tall orders to our economies. But yet again, what about if we had achieved that, the Maputo Protocol of 203 and the 2014 Malabo Declaration? Do you think by funding agriculture up to about 10%, that would solve many of the problems that we're talking about, or would that give us food security in the country?
It would create, you know, solve 3 challenges. It would absorb more youth who are unemployed. Every year we produce 700,000 youth to the job market. Out of those, only 25,000 are able to get jobs. So where do the rest of the youth go? Agriculture would absorb 50% of these youth. If we also improved on the inputs into the sector, the regulation of the sector, it would help in using more technology in the sector that would help improve our agricultural, you know, value chain system and also absorb more youth in the sector which solves our governance crisis in terms of unemployment.
Antonio, FAO has been operating in Uganda for over 4 decades now, and pushing, of course, for increased agriculture production, mechanization, and, of course, achieving a zero hunger situation. Where are we from your assessment when you look at that, and for the 4 decades that FAO has been operating in Uganda? Do you see us as moving rightly, or you think we are still at a deficit?
Thank you very much again. Let's all agree that when it comes to agriculture, Uganda is blessed. Uganda has the potential, or is already, we've seen the numbers in terms of the export, to be the food basket of this region. You are blessed by wonderful soils. You are blessed by the rain and a lot of surface water. And you are also blessed by a population that's continued to grow and that provides a market for the agriculture sector. And we know that agriculture continues to employ large numbers of Ugandans, and the potential within the agriculture sector on a number of commodities is huge for us to exploit. We've been discussing how we can transform this food system. I must also acknowledge that we have seen that still we have some resilience. Despite the COVID-19, we still have the availability. What we have seen is pockets of insecurities that it needs to be addressed. But going forward, we need to do things different to really to get different results. We have seen that COVID-19 definitely has impacted the sector.
Sure.
All actors, all processes within food system have been impacted by COVID-19. But we also agree that before COVID-19, we know that there were certain things within the food system that we have to do different. The way we produce, the way we process, the way we transport, the way we also market our food. Just a visit to our markets here in Kampala, you see at the end of the day the amount of food waste that we have. Even after the production, we are losing a lot when it comes to post-harvest. So from the farm all the way to our plate, we realize that we have opportunities to introduce changes to ensure that your food system can deliver on the promise and can continue to ensure that every Ugandan cannot, because this is the land of plenty. This is, if there is any country in the world that can attain food security and can attain zero hunger, this country is Uganda, because you have it all. So I think there is opportunities for us to explore, and this discussion around the transformation of food system creates an opportunity for us to come up with ideas that are innovative, ideas that we can push for the transformation that we all want. As a FAO, as UN as a whole, we have been seeing that it's not only in Uganda that the food system has been failing. We see globally that we have huge numbers of people going hungry in the world. The data in 2020 was pointing between 720 to 811 million people on a world that produced sufficient food to feed everyone. So there is a failure when it comes to global food system. We've seen that there is room for improvement in the different countries. So the discussion and that we want to promote at national level is how we identify these opportunities and transform them in a way that we address the food insecurity.
I and Sarah want to agree that if we had implemented the Maputo Protocol and the Malabo Declaration, maybe it would be somewhere. Did you think it's actually a funding deficit that we are having these problems? What about if we raise the budgets tomorrow to maybe 8%, not even 10%, but just to 8%? Where would that pitch us in as far as managing our food systems?
We have a number of areas that I believe increased investment will add value and will be transformative. I think even in the context of post-COVID, countries really have to rethink and see how they reallocate the resources to prioritize commodities that really can bring impact in terms of GDP, in terms of poverty alleviation, but in terms of economic growth. I see that a number of areas. If you look at the production, our agriculture, as the minister has indicated, is still of a subsistence nature. We're still using hose, we're still using animal traction, is not fully mechanized. The use of inputs is still low. We use 2 kilograms of fertilizer per hectare, while in US they're using 50 kilograms per hectare. We are seeing that when it comes to pest and disease control, we need to do more to ensure that we are efficient and that our produce can compete with the imported produce here in Uganda, but elsewhere in the market out there. So the resource can go in terms of production. The resource must go also in terms of value addition. Yes, agriculture contributes to the GDP, but we know that we're exporting mainly raw products. And someone have said that when you export raw products, you import poverty. So we need to invest more in terms of agro food processing to allow opportunities for the youth of Ugandans to find jobs along the value chain, jobs that are decent, jobs that provide an income that is a decent income, and resources must be going when it comes to agro-food processing. And I believe that the NDP 3, through its program of agro-industrialization, is an opportunity for us to do more value addition on a number of commodities. Your country is, when it comes to agriculture, the opportunities are immense. You name it, there is an opportunity. And I believe that the parish model is an opportunity also for us to plan better, because it allows us to go at a unit level of planning that when it comes to agriculture, it is important. It is important for us to look at the condition of production. We know that the country has been divided in a number of agroecological zones, but we need also to see how are the soils. We need to look at the vocational and the occupational of the soil, but also we need to invest more when it comes to the organization of our farmers. Small production schemes, small plots will not bring us the scale that we need for agro-industrialization. So it is important that our farmers also look at ways that they organize to really gain scale and to be competitive internally, but also at a global level. I see opportunities when it comes to post-harvest. You know
that's a challenge, yeah.
It's a huge challenge,
that's a very big
and
challenge.
we're losing a lot.
Post-harvest handling.
Just by addressing the post-harvest challenge, we have a boost when it comes to economic agriculture production. We also know that we need to produce more, but with less resource. We have the issues, the minister has mentioned the challenge when it comes to climate change. Agriculture is one of the major driver of climate change. 30% of greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture production. But we need to eat. So let's find ways of continuing to eat, but to do it sustainably. This is the challenge that we have, because agriculture is a driver to climate change, but at the same time, we know that it is on the receiving end of the negative impact of climate change. So the areas of investment to address your question is quite vast. Yes, we need more resources, but we also need to look and where to invest because the opportunities are quite
Agnes, come in here. We are discussing this issue of investment and financing, which I think is very pivotal and crucial to us to actually manage the problem of food security or insecurity. But yet again, coming to you, Agnes, here, you notice that when we talk about Uganda, 47% of East Africa's arable land is actually in Uganda. What do you think needs to be done for this country with this very good natural resource to leverage on and have a competitive advantage over the others to actually produce food, like he says, for Uganda and for the continent of Africa? What needs to be done in terms of that? Because when you look at our settings, we have defragmented the land. And when you talk about production at that level, looking at a thing that not so many Ugandans can actually get into. We have people who have just very small pieces of land that what they can actually only till on that land is for them to sustain themselves. And they can't get into what President Museveni calls a chida chonka. They can't run away from a chida chonka because that's where they actually seem to be excelling.
Wow. First and foremost, I wish to congratulate farmers in Uganda. If we truly know what farmers are going through to feed us, that's what I decided to do. I start from the note of appreciating them and congratulating them. They are the only set of investors who consistently make losses and they do not migrate their capital. So I want to congratulate them. But also secondly, I want to thank them that for at least they can feed themselves. You know what has happened, Mr. Jagenda? If at all of the farmers whose statistics stagger from 58 to 70 to 60 to 58 to 70, if all of them lifted the burden of feeding them to the state, I don't think we would have managed. So even when they are chida chonka, at least I congratulate them for they can feed themselves because our government currently does not have capacity to feed the hungry. I don't think we need to go in there. Thirdly, I may not be diplomatic as Dr. Antonio or others. It's immoral. It is immoral that we can even think about one person
Going hungry
in a country like Uganda, known as a country of plenty. And I always wish to mobilize people that they take it the way I take it, that it is immoral. You can only be hungry for hours because of the errands that you're running in a day. And we know how the hunger pangs cut deep. But talk about people, we are talking in percentages and they appear small. 30%, okay, at least 20%. I think we are doing a bit better because now they are 20%.
We lose it from the percentages. You want to say so?
The issue is those people as we speak here.
But the minister said even 20% is not a number to pride about.
Not even one. Not even one in a country of plenty like Uganda. So let us just know that we are living in a state of immorality because they are hungry people in a country of plenty.
What needs to be done, Agnes, to leverage on the plenty?
When you talk about the investments in agriculture, when we are asking about the 10%, and I know there are people who are going to follow this show and start telling you that even there's so much money in roads, there's so much money everywhere, there's so much money everywhere.
The holistic planning, of course, the minister will tell you that. We plan holistically. You need to make the roads, you need to provide electricity and all these things. Yeah.
Why is it that allegation is not made to other sectors? Because, for instance, food insecurity is an insecurity issue. Food insecurity is an insecurity issue. He was talking about it. When we are talking about the issues of food, we are talking about health outcomes. We are talking about education outcomes. We are talking about peace and security. We are talking about poverty. We are talking about all of these other sectors. So why are we unfair to ourselves that when we are called upon to do the right thing, we find an excuse?
Wouldn't you want to think, Agnes, it's a mindset problem?
And indeed.
Because when you look at the parish development model, it talks about addressing mindset
The
change.
mindset change.
When you look at NDP3, it
there is a whole program of mindset.
Yes, exactly.
The problem is we don't know whose mindset needs to be changed.
All of us as Ugandans.
Everybody thinks that the mindset is of another person.
No, but I think it's all of us, Agnes.
The mindset is for all of us.
Because you know why? She's given us statistics of those that come from university every other time. But you notice that if I come from university, I come from university when I hate going to the garden. When you talk about agriculture, it is something that we grew doing as a punishment.
Yes.
So you do not expect me to come from university and not start a shop somewhere and just get into agriculture.
And actually, when we are having these conversations of transforming the food system, because we are having a food systems summit in September, we have already done a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal of the summit at the end of June in Rome, and there are conversations everywhere. Indeed in Uganda, government is steering conversations here through the leadership of the Office of the Prime Minister, with the support from National Planning Authority and the Ministry of Agriculture, and so many other sectors come on board. And one of the game changers, globally and nationally, is how we think about the food system. In our minds, when we talk about food, what comes to our mind? Honorable Minister was talking about the malnourished. Do you know that we are having 32% of the school-going children obese?
You've gone back to statistics now.
32% of the school-going children.
Are these 32 children, or how many are they now?
Obese.
Yes.
You know, when this is how I do it. There is no half a person, okay? So for every 10 school-going children, 4 of them are obese.
And that's as a result of having too much food?
Eating wrongly. So now, in this very country, we are having the 28 that are stunted, 23 children.
Stunted.
They are stunted. We are having 4 children, school-going children.
Eating bad.
Actually, the under 5, they are equal. They are almost equal. They are like 3 children under 5. They are obese. 3 out of 10, they are malnourished. In this country, 54% of the adults, and because there is no half a person, 6%, I mean 6 of the 10 in front of you, they suffered stunting while they were young. So, if we are having a malnourished population at either ends, then we are not going to talk about innovation. We are not going to talk about research. You know, we are not going to, Dr. Antonio was talking about people innovating along the entire value chain and they implement themselves. Therefore, when you look at the Malabo is very good because this time the states were like, let us be very clear. Where do we want the money? These farmers that we keep enjoying condemning, many of them spend a whole year without seeing an extension worker.
The farmers that we talk about?
Yes. Those farmers we are talking about, many of them are planting grain and they are calling it seed.
What?
But we are expecting them to increase the production and productivity. When we talk about the pastoralists, I was happy the other day I saw the 2 ministers from the sector. And I hope this time it is done better. Working with the pastoral communities. Because quarantining in foot and mouth disease is a temporary measure. But we have farmers, pastoralists that have been in quarantine
Agnes,
for years. So we are talking about disease and pest management.
Agnes, hold it there. Let me first get to the minister here. Honorable Minister, I am also alive to the fact that, you know, when Agnes talks about when you respond to the budget of agriculture, you of course talk about the holistic planning that the government has. You will say we will not put in a lot of money to agriculture when we do not have the roads to apply on to take foodstuffs to the market and do all the things. That keeps coming. But you also remember that when they were anchoring the SDGs in 2015, Uganda is one of these countries that was looked at as a country that would end poverty by 2030. And here is where we are now with revelations of how stunted Ugandans are. People are starving. Even at 20%, of course, you wouldn't want two people to go hungry. What is failing us? What is our trajectory like when everybody out there thinks and believes that Uganda should actually be having food for everybody? We cannot even have food for ourselves. The other day I was watching Kenyan television, and the Deputy President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, was actually responding to why he was coming to Uganda. And he said, one of the reasons I was going to Uganda was to go and actually benchmark, look at how they do, a country that had a food deficit, but it's now having plenty. Now, somebody out there thinks there's a lot of food in here, but yet again, when you come back home, things seem different. Honorable Minister, what needs to be done, and what should we have as a solution to all these issues?
Okay, thank you very much. But I will begin by first, I think, adding on to my sister Agnes. I think when she was appreciating the farmers for doing well, she needs to first appreciate the head of state.
As the chief farmer?
Who has been mobilizing, actually as a chief farmer, but who has been mobilizing. Even this word of Chida Chonka. It is his whatever which has been going around, his message to address to the farmers to move away from subsistence
from a Chida Chonka
to commercial.
To the market now.
So as a patron, I think we need to commend him. And I must agree, because I remember I am also a political supervisor. In 2017, His Excellency came to Bugisu to mobilize. At that time, poverty at household level, we were at 35%. But through his mobilization, we are now at 13. So we need to appreciate where we have come from and where we are going. So it is not that much as these negatives may be there, but the trends are showing that we are at least improving. I must thank Mr. Antonio for appreciating that we can be a food basket. And that's why we are now trying, like we are talking of mindset change. My sister talked of the youth who could be having employment. We are struggling with the youth to change their mindset, because many of them think that agriculture, like you said, when you go into agriculture, it's like you are going to be punished. Yet it is where you can get money.
Because in schools we're punished to actually do agriculture.
Exactly. Now, as a supervisor for Manafa district, I can tell you, I mobilized the youth and brought them here. There were 180 in Kampala to train in production of white meat. But when you go there now, they are now rearing rabbits on their own. And I was talking with some of them. One said, I now have 100, and the 2 rabbits go for 40,000. It is a mindset change. Some of these are graduates whom you had to bring here. You tell them, me, I have a PhD. But when I was in Europe, I used to clean people's houses. Does anybody in Uganda know that Honorable Minister Kitutu used to clean houses? I was looking for what? For money. So look for money in whatever form, so long as you have money. So my sisters, we can agree that this, but we all have to work on the mindset change. The opportunities, like he said, are there, and they are enormous. And that's why, as a country, you also need to commend us. We have now said no wastage of money, no travel abroad, no luxuries, and all this money is what we are channeling to the parish model. So it is like we have confessed and said we are no longer going to continue sinning, that we want to be new people, and say this money goes to where?
What about if there's no COVID? Because we're not traveling, not traveling because of COVID. Much of our travels are now being curtailed because of COVID.
No, we had already decided before.
What about if there's
COVID
no
just came to fulfill, but we had already made I mean, we had already made, because we saw from lessons learned somewhere and said, let's stop and do this first.
At planning the parish development model, did we have a budget for it? Or we put up a model and decided to just find monies from somewhere else, now by saving on the travels and of course all these trips?
Yes, of course, that saving also makes you to have money. Now that we have money, we can now do the parish model. You need to appreciate that.
Yes.
And also, I also need to talk about, yes, you've said there are many who are malnourished, many who are this, but there are certain things which we are trying to address in the communities. Some of those may not necessarily be that food is not. There are other, other drivers or underlying causes. Like I can tell you, I'm the Minister of Karamoja. But I was trying to look at the statistics, and my region is topping 48% of people who abuse alcohol. And that is a very big driver to some of the problems which we have. So people do, and you know, when you take a lot of alcohol, you have no energy to work. And so those are things which we are now going to try and address. But like he said, the opportunities are there. But how do we look at the negatives and then promote, try to sensitize, and we shall not stop.
Honorable Minister, I want to agree with you that yes, we have achieved some things.
Yes,
we really can't wish it away, and we can't say there's nothing that has been done. But just like Ishoso pointed it out, when we talk about mindset change, whose mindset are we talking about in this regard? Whose mindset do we want to change? Because it still comes back to all of us. But the issue of mindset change, it is very well written in our parish development model. It is very well written in the NDP3. These are very good things, of course, that come from our planners. But the issue, again, comes into whose mindset are we talking about? Because you talk about your region in Karamoja. They drink, now they need a mindset change. But whose mindset are we talking about in this regard?
Now, when we talk of mindset change, of course, we are going to have groupings. You have the youth, you have the women, you have the communities, you have even us adults, even people in the work environment. You can also have a mindset change, not to be wasteful, learn saving cultures. You know, we are still very poor at savings. So all categories of people, or at whatever level you are, you can change your mindset and do better. Stop wasting, and even wastage of food, like he said, that is also a mindset change. I was hearing, you can find some people pouring food, others don't have. This happens in Uganda. Just this week I was being told a pickup of cassava in one district is costing 200,000. In another district, they even don't have that cassava. So this happens in Uganda. Now, we are trying to see how we make a country more food secure. Because what happens is, like also in my district, actually, I'm struggling with it. We have 3 zones, the mountainous, mid-mountainous, then the lowland. Now, people have a thinking that I have to grow maize, when actually on your land is suitable for either agriculture or other things. But because, you know, I wake up every morning, I have to grow maize and beans. But we have now started guiding them, and if you go there, you grow groundnuts and what, then you sell this and go and buy maize. Now, this is the mindset change which we are trying to teach people to see that you don't force what does not grow in your area into an area.
Very important, Minister. Sarah, picking it up from there now, it also brings you to another very important issue here of zoning the country. Because if you are in a place and you do not know what you should be growing, you do not know what you should be doing, but simply because there is land there for you, as you said, people are actually not even sowing seeds, but what possibly should be eating. Who is there to help? We have extension workers, we have all these people, but just zoning the country. I will take you back I will take you back to 1998 when we got a fund from IFAD. It's a fund that was supposed to go for 20 years until 2018. And now that fund was predominantly for vegetable oils development in this country. And we saw the processes there in Kalangala, in Muvuma. And it amazes that up until 2018, when the program was actually ending, we still had issues that people were still grappling. You could hear the project itself just trying to find land. And you have a program that has been running for 20 years. Up to its tail end, we're still finding that. The issue of zoning the country, have we done it every well, Sarah, that you think people can know very well that if I'm in the mountains of Renzori, if I'm in the mountains of Elgon, if I'm in the flat land of Karamoja or elsewhere, this is what I should be doing?
You know, we need to compare agriculture as a sector and its performance from previous years. In the 1970s, agriculture was contributing 75% of our GDP. But also, as much as there was need for diversification of our economy, we need to look at the drivers then for agriculture as a sector. We had the cooperative movement. We had the strong extension services. We had demonstration farms in every district where farmers would go and learn what they need to learn. They would introduce new inputs and people would even access inputs from these demonstration farms. Yes. All these things were destroyed by NRM when they came. The cooperative movement, demonstration farms, things grabbed, farms are still grabbed, what used to be district demonstration farms. We had extension farmers. I grew up as a child seeing the extension farmers coming home once every week, paid by government. All these things went away, and that's how the sector went down in terms of productivity, in terms of organized markets that were offered by cooperative movement, in terms of buffer stocking and price control by the cooperative movement. So all these things don't exist. Actually, there is no clear incentive for the sector's agriculture. There are no organized markets. Cooperative movements were closed. There are no inputs. There are no services to the farmer. Most of these rural population engaged in farming are semi-literate or illiterate. So when you talk about farming and knowing what to do, even at the time the Uganda area was being constructed, it was going to particular areas to collect particular agricultural products. So zoning is not a new idea in Uganda. It's just NRM trying to recreate what they destroyed. So why did they do this? And is it rocket science to know what we need to do as a country to secure farmers, secure the sector, and increase productivity in this country? We need organized markets. We need access to these markets. We need price control. We need inputs and technology. Is government ready to do this? I think these are the questions we should be discussing.
How were cooperatives formed and how were they destroyed? Because somebody will argue out. We still have cooperatives today. There is BCU in Bugisu.
Busoga resisted that. Busoga and Bugisu resisted.
In Kasese, there's a cooperative in Kasese, very productive, and quite a number. Now there's the Uganda Cooperatives Alliance. How are cooperatives formed? That we need to indict the Honorable Minister here to tell us how they should be formed.
Let me share my example of Banyankole Kweterana, because that's the region where I come from. Cooperatives would receive produce. First of all, they would guide. Even at harvest and yielding, where you have our products being expelled now from ESC market for aflatoxins and that kind of thing, cooperatives would guide farmers, in addition to extension workers, on how to handle their produce. Then they would receive and store and ensure quality control at that level, and also find markets. But also, you know, cushion the farmers in terms of cash flow. So all of these services do not exist. Busoga has resisted. You know how many times, at one time, Busoga Cooperative Union was up in arms with government.
Bugisu.
Yeah, Bugisu, yes. Resisting from being destroyed like the other cooperative movement. We are trying to reinstate cooperative movements in form of circles, in form of microfinance. That cannot beef up agriculture sector. A farmer, we know even agriculture is considered risky business in our banking form. You cannot even get collateral as farmers. So these are the incentives we must discuss as a country.
But do we need to be whipped into cooperatives, or this is something that we can start as people?
Because cooperatives were providing this security that banks consider risky to fund. They were providing this service. You know, once a farmer has guidance in terms of extension workers, guidance in terms of how to treat the yield, because many farmers are making losses at harvesting, at storage capacity. It is not in the farm. Once you have these facilities, because farmers would take their produce at the parishes, which were collecting centers for cooperatives, there were storage facilities at those parishes. These facilities no longer exist. Even as you talk about that there is a cooperative movement, where are these facilities? In my parish, the storage facilities have grown grass. So where is the cooperative movement that we are talking
Sarah,
about?
I would want to imagine this way. I would want to think this way, that you have a small piece of land. I have a small piece of land. She has a small piece of land. And all of us want to do it at individual level. And at the end of the day, every one of us has different issues. When I do my small farming, I want to run to the market by myself. What about if we agreed by ourselves that Sarah and I and Agnes, we are all into cassava planting in this particular area. We're not allowed to go to the market individually. And we decide, we talk about pouring all this food and all the things. Who needs to whip us into that? If we decided to do that by ourselves, would Honorable Chitutu here and government come to stop us from doing that? I'm only thinking, because
yes,
I want to understand how...
You need to look at the composition of farmers.
Yes.
If you look at our estimate, 8.8 million farmers, 80% of these are small holder farmers. That means that they do production.
Which I think is a problem.
Yes, on 1 hectare, you know, a piece of land. We also have challenges, of course, of land tenure system and who owns, you know, ownership of land, and then who owns produce, especially for women and youth. But then you have now the 19% that are able, that are medium and large scale farmers. Those have capacity to do what you're talking about. They have the luxury to say, I can organize and send my produce to Karamoja. In Imbarara, it's normal for people to power milk during the peak seasons of milk. You see people
because everybody has a milk with
yes, there's nobody to buy, there's no market, and then you're like, then you hear Karamoja, people are starving. You know, Bushenyi, where I come from, there is malnutrition these days. You know, a district which used to be very productive agriculture. So you see, people powering milk, children are malnourished. People are stunted. We do not have any organization as a country for intra-trade and intra-movement of agricultural goods.
Okay. Honorable Minister, before you come in, let me come to Antonio here. Just before we take a break, we know that year 2021, according to the UN, is undoubtedly a year of climate action. And looking at the COP26 and, of course, the food summit that we talk about here, all produces opportunities, or it gives opportunities to the stakeholders. What needs to be learned from these? What opportunities need to be picked from this by the different stakeholders, especially governments and policymakers?
First, I think we collectively we have to come together to address the emergency that we have, the climate emergency. We know that our planet is warming up. And now there's no discussion on the science and the cause of it. We know there's anthropic actions as human action in this planet that is provoking this warming. And we also know the consequences, that if you do not do anything now, today, we know that what is coming down in decades to come, and we've already seen it, the impact. We've seen the variability of the climate. We have seen the extremes associated with the rains. We have seen more floods. We have seen more landslides. So we really have to come together to address this global emergency. And we believe that is the role of every nation. And it starts with every one of us. We're talking about mindset change. Indeed, it is at individual level. There is everyone in this planet can do something and do our share to see how we address this global emergency. But linking this global emergency to what we're talking, the food system, it is important because we know that any impact on the global dynamic of our climate will definitely impact our production system. And this will create more food insecurity, even in the land of plenty. So we need to bring all actors together because we know that this is from the farmer all the way to the consumption and to our plate. And all of us, we have a role to play. We believe that it is clear that the pandemic has clearly showed us that there is fragility in the system. But the pandemic has also showed us that we need to do everything possible to maintain the food system alive. We cannot afford to let our food system collapse because we know the implications. So the discussion around the COP26, but also the food summit in September, is to see how we come together as a nation for us to reassess and to also to awaken for the commitment that we made in 2015 by 2030 to have a world that is zero hunger. So, but we know that we're not in a good track. We also need to find ways for the transformation. And the discussion that we've been having tonight clearly is pointing out to the direction of things that we know we can do better. And I think Uganda, we have identified all the actions, we have identified the solutions, and more than just the summit in September is what we will engage to do after the summit. And we are prepared also to put in place a monitoring system to ensure that we follow through on the promises that by 2030 we have a world that is free of hunger. And as I mentioned, Uganda, this goal is achievable. First and foremost, there are certain things that we can do immediately in terms of addressing the needs of those in need of food. I don't think that your country does not have sufficient food. The problem is on distribution. When we have pockets of insecurity, that can be addressed with some safety nets that ensure that you do have the resources to give the food for those in need. But of course, we have to invest more on our farmers. We have to de-risk agriculture, as Sarah has pointed out, de-risk, and to ensure that the resource that comes to fund the agriculture sector can come in a way that does not add additional burden in our farmers, and create opportunities for us also to skill the youth, because as I mentioned, throughout the value chain, we have a huge opportunities.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Antonio. To all our viewers out there, we just want to take a very short break, but to just also let you know that you can be part of the conversation, you can be part of the discussions here, you can be part of the discussion on food security in this country by getting to us on 0790709 602-592. Now, that's our number for WhatsApp. You can send us a WhatsApp message, a comment, a concern, or a question to any of the people that you hear in studios here to be able to share your thoughts on 0709 602 592. Now, that's our WhatsApp number. But remember, this conversation is also streaming live via Facebook and YouTube. Facebook page is UBC TV on Facebook and UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. You can still be part of this via our hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines on Twitter to follow the conversation. Now, with me in studios is Dr. Mary Goretti Chitutu, the Minister for Karamoja, Mr. Antonio, the FAO country representative, Chirabo Agnes of the Food Alliance, and Sarah Birete. With me in studios tonight, I'm sitting in here for Charles Odongto. We'll take a break, and when we return, we continue with the conversation, and when you also get to us, we'll be able to talk back. Thank you. We'll take a break and return shortly.
Are you looking for an excellent university? African Bible University is truly special, and our graduates are unique. At ABU, we offer bachelor degrees in education, business, mass communication, and biblical studies. If you want to make an impact on the next generation, apply now at www.abu.ac.ug or call us on 0706 346 587. African Bible University, teaching the treasures of God's truth.
Be alert. Do not share your Airtel Money PIN number with anyone. Airtel Uganda employees will never ask for your Airtel Money PIN number on call, SMS, or by email. All SIM card registrations, SIM card verifications, or SIM swaps are done at clearly branded Airtel shops and not on phone. To report any fraudulent activity, please call 100 immediately. The official calling number for Airtel promotions is 0200 100 100. Stay alert on Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome back from that short break. We continue our conversation and discussion tonight on Behind the Headlines, and of course, looking at food security or discussing food security in this country, Uganda. And with us in studios is Dr. Mary Goretti Chitutu, the Minister for Karamoja. We have Mr. Antonio Guarido, the FAO country representative, a UN agency. We also have Ms. Agnes Chirabo, the Executive Director of Food Rights Alliance, and Sarah Birete, the ED for Center for Constitutional Governance. And of course, here is where we are continuing and carrying on with the conversation. Coming back to you, Agnes, I will start with you. Of course, gleaning from what the rest are saying. Did you look at us as a country? Of course, we can look at all the shortcomings. We can look at what we think has not happened. But what do we need to do to incentivize our agriculture system to be able to get there? Because when we look at every other intervention, when we look at all the things that we're trying to put into place, trying to do or see, he's talking about the 2015, 2030 now SDGs. But we go to them, they could be like the Millennium Development Goals that we got until 2015. So when we go to looking at them, we noted that many of them had not even achieved 50, 40% of their intended purposes or goals. Do you think that when we even talk about this, it is actually a reality that by 2030, we will have a hunger-free planet with every resource that we have and the challenges therein?
Actually, before I think of having a hunger-free planet, is it possible to have a hunger-free Uganda?
Is it possible?
To start with. It is very possible,
absolutely
yesterday. Not even 2030. Yesterday. It is possible. We just have to shift again the way we think and do things. Sarah here told you that the fellows that constructed the Leire, they constructed it on purpose. even when we are doing infrastructure, we should do it on purpose. This is a country and an economy that is still struggling, and therefore we cannot invest everywhere. We have to be very strategic and make certain painful decisions. You know the problem we are having? When we were developing the NDP3, we started with around 7 enterprises. I think now they are 19.
18, I think.
Yeah. When you go to the agriculture sector investment plan, same story. Everybody comes, you see at our place, they grow mushrooms, and then we add mushrooms. Then another one comes, and you know, for us, our place, it is white ants. Then we add the white ants.
Oh, yes,
and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. We cannot invest in all of them strategically. We are talking about investing in systems.
We call that inclusiveness.
That is not, that is exclusion by inclusion.
Inclusiveness. So everybody
Exclusion by inclusion. So we end up cutting our smaller resources into tiny pieces. Production has to be organized. We have to organize the human resource, who are the farmers. We have to organize the inputs, including the basics like soil testing that is not done in this country. Actually, I don't join the conversation of how we are using less fertilizer per hectare. Which fertilizer? We don't know what is missing in our soils. Soil testing is not part of the essential agro inputs. So we need to organize all of that. We need to organize technology that is going to add value. That is all money. We need to negotiate markets. If at all we were very serious than we are, and we sat strategically and say, every mouth in East Africa, every day, will eat a piece of this kind of food from Uganda. That is enough. But we negotiate this market, then we go and negotiate the other one. Now we are negotiating the African continent free market area. Without organizing what are we going to sell in there. In that market, what do we want from it? How do we pull all the resources, the infrastructure, the water, the extension, the technology, the financing? And we are targeting to secure that share of the market that we are negotiating. We are given everything but arms. We are supposed to take everything but except arms. We didn't take anything. We were given a sugar quota, 5,000 metric tons of sugar. We didn't take a grain. Mauritius organized and took our share. We have negotiated the East African market. Even something as simple as eggs, they have been rejected in our regional market, and we are ping-ponging, going round and round. So I'm saying our comparative and competitive advantage as Uganda is not in anything, but looking at the population in East Africa and in Africa and elsewhere as a market that we can feed. Because people are not going to eat machines. They're not going to eat computers. They will eat food everywhere. So if we could organize ourselves and strategically decide on a share of the population that we wish to feed daily on something smaller that is from Uganda. But it is not going to be everything because we don't have capacity.
Agnes, on that particular note, I want to appreciate you and of course bring you to this. In 2018, we had a summit here, the African Conference in Munyonyo. And in that summit, when President Museveni was actually speaking, he had the same sentiments on agriculture and ICT. Because we tend to think that the way to go now is technology, ICT. His same concerns were, we will not dress computers, we will not eat computers, we will not do all the things. Now, the head of state seems like he very much wants to see this country have enough food. What do you think is actually failing us? I'm thinking so. What do you think is actually failing us? Is it the policymakers? Is it the civil society? Where is it? He seems to have the commitment, but something could be failing.
I have told you.
Yes.
That in the National Development Plan...
Sarah's laughed at me and thinks she needs to correct me. But
No, you see the president, the
yes.
head of state, cannot talk like an activist. He must
no, he doesn't talk like an
He
activist.
must act.
Take action.
So what actions has he taken?
I was telling you that it is good to talk like that. It's a good step. But we cannot do it. I have told you we are having 18 enterprises and we are still counting. The cow alone, you know that beast thing, it has so many value chains. It has milk, it has the skins, it has beef, it has the horns, so many value chains. And you're having 18 of them, while the ratio of extension, of farmer to extension, we are still stuck to around 1,800, although sometimes I doubt it. Okay? I doubt it. We are just Malaga producing. We actually do not even have data for a single season of how much maize we are expecting. We don't have data systems. And yet, at least if the commodities were 2 or 3 strategic, the rest can be done, but if you want government support, organize yourselves around these 2 or 3. The Muzungu had all of the economy, but the Muzungu came here for coffee and cotton, and he left the mushrooms for us and other things, and the potatoes. So we need to organize the production and organize marketing and organize everything, such that everywhere we go, even in our foreign missions, we are known for a product. Have you ever been in those big conferences and you introduce yourself that you're from Uganda? At tea break, somebody approaches you, oh, okay, in Uganda, what is being produced in Uganda? Now you start a whole chain. You know there is coffee, you know there is also this one, you know also there is this one. Okay. Annually, how much of it are you producing? And then you start stammering.
Agnes, I agree with you on the issue of data and information. And I think the minister should help us on this particular one. The data bit of it is actually very important. Do we have sufficient information or data about all the things? Because it's one thing to talk about our honey, for example. We know that honey is one of the best globally. But how much honey can we produce?
And
how much honey
where?
can we actually take anywhere? We talk about very good ground nuts. We talk about very good pineapples. You know, when you go to Kalere Market, for example, when you drive through maybe Luwero and those other places, and you find so many of those on the roadside, you'd think that there's actually enough to satisfy the international market. But do we have enough data on much of these things that we do, or we just grapple with what we think is actually happening and try to chance our luck?
Now, I think in terms of data, as a country, you see, we have the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, which is our national database. And this database, the feeders come all the way from the grassroots, that is the districts. Now, we may not be 100%, but also when you go to other specific institutions, at least, you know, before you produce, you need to know how much is needed, like what market is there. Then you come and work backwards to see how you prepare to export. Well, my sister may have talked long that we are not yet prepared, but I think the way I see the country moving, we are now getting better organized. And it is true, people have been farming on smaller plots. Like we said, we used to be traditional farmers. But we are now moving away to commercial agriculture and moving away from the famous Chidachonka. So usually that transition has a timeline, and you can see people are picking up from the statistics. As if you can see that the trend, like I told you, it is a downward trend. Now those in subsistence has 52 from 68. That is positive. And from those, you can now see, you see, even for you to access the market, there are standards. Now those are things which we are working on. There are exports where they will need you to export when you are growing in greenhouses. And believe me, when you now go to Ugandans, many are now going into greenhouse farming. So slowly, I think we shall be there. Some of the challenges have been access to funding, but you can see us as a country, we are prioritizing, capitalizing Uganda Development Bank. This is to make Ugandans access cheap money. Some of the challenges, my sisters, have been expensive loans in commercial banks. But as a country, we've realized this and said, oh, we need cheaper money for our Ugandans. Number two, even when you go to Bank of Uganda, there are agricultural loans. But I was trying to find out, also not many Ugandans, you know, you also need to be on the lookout for information to know where can I get opportunities to better my business. So this is how people are now waking up. The YC Ugandans, they are now really on the move, going upward trend to see that they also better the agriculture. Well, yeah, it is true. You may go, sometimes it may be hard to get statistics, especially when you are collecting groundnuts, like, because you don't have that, like we said, organized farmer groups. Now, this parish model will be able to help in this, because we've tested it. Like, as a political supervisor, I organized a farmer group. You know, we were trying to fight land fragmentation. So organize them in a 10-acre model. First of all, my sister, it's not very easy. When it comes to land in Uganda, you have to really persuade people, and I had to be part of the land group for them to accept. Oh, you want to collect our land, then you take it. So that is also, but at the end of it, when these farmers put 10 acres together, and we have our documented incomes in a year, they use, in fact, they use not to get even 2 million out of it, because this one is growing beans, another one is growing cassava. But now when they are growing together, minimum they get is around 80 million. These are now documented ones. Now these are things which we are scaling up. When they see, they now say, oh, so if we put this together, we can now farm as a group. These have been tested in other countries like Nigeria. So that's what we talked about, changing the whole way. You know, we have been traditional farmers, and we were doing well because we had enough to eat. But we now have to move out, given that our population is growing, and we have to change. Now, my sister talked about cooperatives. Well, the history of cooperatives is long, and I think it begins from the early 19s, when people were moving away from, they were trying to get better prices from foreigners who were oppressing them on prices. That's when people came together to form cooperatives. And I think cooperatives have been going through a transition. Now, to say that NRM government neglected cooperatives, I think that one is also too harsh, because I have at least been around for a while. In the 1960s, true, there were cooperatives, and I come from a region which grows coffee, and Bugisu Cooperative Union was very strong. But I also have to tell you the disadvantages. At that time, I remember my father would get his coffee, takes it to the cooperative, but would not get the money there and then in that day. So sometimes would go to school without school fees. Then later on, when he's paid, it is when we get. But now as I speak, cooperatives are liberalized. Anybody can form a cooperative. And this is now the business of competition. In Mbale, we now have several cooperatives, and I'm free to look for the best. Who has the best price? And if you went there now, coffee now is at 8,000 a kilogram. And farmers are not, because in fact it is now the product that is not there, but otherwise the buyers are more. So liberalization also has made it better. So we shouldn't blame that NRM made cooperatives die. I think NRM found when cooperatives were on their way to the grave, because 60 they were there. Then 1970, when we had the economic war, you know, everything went down. I remember as a young girl, we were taking our coffee to Kenya, so the BCU was dead. So now when NRM came in, that's when now they were reviving. And you know, when a system is being revived, there are several changes. You cannot be static forever. Sincerely, something which was in 1913 cannot be the same in 2021.
Hold it
so,
up, Honorable Minister, and all the guests in studio here. the public wants to come to the conversation here, and I just want to see how my producers help me to get their concerns or conversations. I can now see many of them are asking lots of questions. And unfortunately, I don't think I can actually read from that distance. My producers need to help me pull the screen closer to me. I should be able to read it from a closer range. That says to Jagenda, I think. Oh, okay. Well, we're trying to find them here. And thank you so much. I'm trying to find the concerns here or the comments that are coming through to us. Several people actually asking, they have a lot of concerns, and we just want to know how to respond to them. Quite a number of those, the discussion is very terrible for them. To Jagenda, thank you so much for the program. I would like, oh God, okay, just make it stable there. Give it to me again. Just give it to me again. As I was reading a message for myself. I need to find it. It's just a technical issue that we're working on here to see how it actually works out. Now, this is James from Buburu Manafa, and this goes to Dr. Chitutu. Problems of fake drugs and pesticides is killing farmers. It is killing farmers' efforts. Secondly, swine fever has also costed us a lot of myoga cash in not viable intervention. It should be, I beg your pardon, it should have been inputs like bricklaying groups. He's giving an alternative. Doctor, kindly intervene on that other one. The other message that I was reading prior to that, hello, my name is Madoi Othman, a student. As a humble citizen, I would simply like to inquire why the nation up to now, why the country Uganda doesn't have any food storages to settle the issue of surplus production except exportation. And I think that was another question that I wanted to bring to you, Honorable Minister, the issue of storage facilities, because I think somebody raised it here. Mr. Jagena, thank you so much for the program. I would like to thank all the panelists for their presentations. Sarah and Agnes have made my evening. Sarah, you forgot to mention the marketing boards, which made sure quality control was a norm for commodities. That I think that they would, I think they may be without, would be among the best at the international markets. Now, that's from Mildred. Talking about the marketing boards. Charles Tweheyo, to FAO, Ndugu Antonio, this is yours here. What is the role of the national food stores, and why don't FAO emphasize establishment of food stores in ensuring food security in Uganda? That's for you. You need to come in there and help. Let me get another one or two more. Then we, of course, come back to respond to those. We won't manage all of them. Now, Mr. Bariraine Hakim, chairperson of ESAF, Uganda. But from Mayuge, of course, is from Mayuge. And my question to the minister is, does she know we have the East African Market Protocol? And does she know that as Ugandans, what we put in the market is either substandard or refused? And if that is the case, who is to blame? Are they the farmers? And are the farmers benefiting from that? The standards, the East African standards, and quite a number of things. And I think somebody hinted about the aflatoxins here and many of those issues. Honorable Minister will respond to that. Musime Philomonia is in Imbarara. Indeed, knowledge is power. And that is what I agree with Chirabo and Sarah that they've exhibited today. Thank you very much. Okay, we pause them here for a while and come back to this. Honorable Minister, the issue of storage and the silos. We've always had that problem where farmers have actually said we have produced and had a bumper harvest. But yet again, all what we do goes to waste because we don't seem to be having enough silos or storage facilities in the country. And the other questions that have also been raised by our viewers. Could you please respond to those? And I think Sarah and Agnes may not have anything to respond to, apart from just thanking you. It is now Antonio and the Honorable Goreti Chitutu.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the issue of storage facilities, yes, in a country, are vital. And as a country, I think it is within our programs to have them. Although currently, of course, we rely on the private sector sometimes to come in to support government by providing that role. And I think, as you know, like you mentioned, that we normally have a lot of competing needs. And we go on prioritizing. But I know at one time we shall be able to be there. Because at one time as Uganda, our problem was security. And we had to fight and put things clear. Then we went into infrastructure. Then, so slowly we are moving, and at one time we shall be able to achieve that. But truly speaking, yes, it's true. Storage facilities are important for a country in terms of food security. And as a ministry, even when we debate in cabinet, you see my colleagues raising this, but sometimes the resource envelope may not allow for us to intervene in all these issues. Now, there was someone who mentioned that there is an East African protocol, and usually our standards of the produce does not meet what is required on the market, and you find that sometimes with aflatoxins, our goods are rejected.
And surprisingly, as you respond to that, you notice that the same maize with aflatoxins is consumed here, or who would consume it here. When it crosses to Kenya, that's when the issue of aflatoxin comes in. Do we even mind about ourselves, about our people, that it's okay for us to have the maize with aflatoxins, but when we get to the market, that's when we have problems? Is it okay for our public?
Now, this, of course, is a challenge which is still there, and which we have to accept, that we still have issues with the post-harvest handling, the way they produce sometimes in hand, not all of it, but some of it, especially, again, under the subsistence. You know, sometimes you grow produce under subsistence, then you end up marketing it. That's where you have those challenges. But these are also issues as a country which we have identified as challenges, and we are working towards addressing them. So the Minister of Agriculture has put this again as priorities to see that farmers are trained on how they handle this produce. But sometimes even when you train them, they need to be enforced to be there for them to do the right thing. I can talk for coffee. I remember when I was growing up, there was a way coffee would be handled. But now these days with liberalization, even if people have been told, when you go to see the way farmers handle, and the things are not refused on the market. So this also makes the farmers to continue, because in the past by that it would be rejected, but these days it seems either the population has grown. I see all the coffee in Bugis is taken, even that which
the way it is. Even that is which is badly handled. Sarah wanted to come in here
but those are issues which we are handling, I think. But
you wanted to say something,
that
Sarah,
is a challenge.
on what the minister is actually saying about that?
You know, the minister, in one aspect, is talking about, the full liberalization. Then she concluded on the challenges of liberalization. I think globally, all economists have agreed that the government has a role to play in the economy. You cannot leave the economy to the market forces and fold your hands as government. Government must regulate, government must supervise and control, because the economies belong to nations. They do not belong to private actors. So the approach of saying we liberalize it, cooperative movement, we liberalize it, this is why the sector has gone down the drain. There was a comment on Coffee Marketing Board, the boards that would control quality and standardization for international markets. We had Coffee Marketing Board, we had Lint Marketing Board. I think the last time I heard about facilities for Coffee Marketing Board, the house was given to somebody for AGOA. Those girls that were tailoring for AGOA, I don't know whether they are still there. So we had all these national assets. Even when you talk about the cooperative movements collapsing on their own, questions are raised, where did the assets go? For example, Banyankore Kwetera had assets. There was a lot of political interference in Banyankore Kwetera and how it was managed. The last person, the government put a soldier there. Then you cannot even take stock of what happened to the assets or whatever as a cooperative union. So that happened, and I think we cannot wash it away. The revival of cooperatives, I'm told now we have a minister for cooperatives. I don't know what he's doing. Maybe UBC should invite him on one of the shows. What is he ministering? Because I don't know the cooperatives in the nature in which they exist. If they are small individuals doing their work and their private sector, really, I don't understand that. I think government needs to go back to the drawing board on that issue.
Okay. Agnes?
Yeah, they asked about storage. And this reminded me of the constitutional obligation that this government has under Objective 22. When we are talking about food security, the national objective.
And set policy.
Yes. Yes. When we are talking about food security, this government committed to ensure food security. And even went ahead specifically in the Constitution and committed to establishing national food reserves. The issue of national food reserves, actually, currently they are referred to as strategic reserves. And it is a very big debate in WTO, the public stock holdings. When we are talking about these things, government is the biggest beneficiary. Because look at what we went through in the previous lockdown in 2020, when the government committed to give people food and actually relied on the private sector that Honorable Minister was talking about, that sold to government things that do not qualify to be food. We all saw the beans.
What was it?
We saw the beans. And I'm telling you, even the Bureau of Standards authentically came out and told us
not fit for consumption.
That 23 or 30-something% of the food that was being given out was not fit for human consumption. Had our government gotten their food reserves, why they are referred to as strategic reserves, they play two core roles, because economically, the most difficult form of inflation that is very difficult to handle is the food inflation. So when the food inflation hits the economy, government releases some of this food to the economy and brings the food prices, making food affordable to some of us that would have put our bowels before the government. Where are our national food reserves? Maybe Honorable can tell me what happened to them.
And maybe to add on that, you know, the National Food Reserve System encourages household food reserve and storage. We used to have silos in every household. Yes. Do they still exist?
But you know they cannot exist, Sarah.
What happened to those now?
You know what is happening?
What happened to
Traditionally, beans, maize, groundnuts were not. They were not marketable. They were for household consumption.
That's why we had them in the houses.
They would even have them in the biagi, in the granaries.
The granaries.
But now, and by the way, from a gender perspective, it is when we got the non-traditional cash crops, the beans, the bananas, we started seeing men in the banana plantations. They used not to go there. They could only walk through their coffee and what and what. But now you find them in the groundnuts plantations, you find them in the potato plantations.
The traditional cash crop.
Yes, because now they cannot be kept anymore in the granaries because of the theft, okay? But when we are talking about these issues, we are also talking about how do we make sure that we revitalize the rural economy, you know? That the entire household is not looking at this single bird laying 12 eggs for survival. How do we make sure that we rebuild the rural the rural economy.
Okay, just hold it there. Let me have Antonio come in here. You had a concern from the public.
Yeah.
Yes, a question from
No, just
the viewers.
to let the viewer know that indeed FAO has an entire guideline on the strategic grain reserves in terms of its how you establish them, how you're supposed to also to care for its operation, and also management, because it is critical. Maybe Uganda may have to sometime revisit this notion of having a strategic food reserve. In the region, we have supported Ethiopia, Zambia, in a number of countries, particularly the ones that really have a recurrent situation of food insecurity, where the strategic food reserves then become an important tool to help the government manage situation of food insecurity and to ensure that you meet the needs of those in need. It is also an economic issues, because there are models. It does not have to be only about storage. There are other countries that they have a fund that work as a strategic reserve. In case of food insecurity, they do have this fund to ensure that they have the resources to procure and also deliver. But yes, we could definitely work with the government to see how this can be brought in again to the discussion. But the potential is here for us to ensure that we can have a strategic food reserve, promote also food banks at a community level. What we have seen in terms of in the past, every household used to have a silo traditionally built. There is an opportunity to instill in the local communities that we should also make provisions, particularly when you have plenty, when you have bumper harvest. Is good for you to also...
according to you, from FAO position now, did you look at Uganda's potential as growing enough food even without the GMOs? Can we even try to run it from the GMOs and continue just with our organic food? Do we have that potential now as we stand?
Oh yes, oh yeah. This country, as I mentioned, you have the potential to be the food basket of the region, and do even more when it comes to agriculture exports.
Okay.
The GMO is another discussion, but you can with the seeds that we have now, they're approved in the market, produce sufficiently. And you can also use food reserve to also control the export. And if you don't need it, you can just liberate to the market for it to be exported or for to be consumed otherwise.
Okay.
So it is a good move.
Okay.
To think on a strategic grain reserve. Yes.
Well, that's very important. Now, we've not discussed, we've not talked about value addition. And I think that's also very important to talk about now. When we talk about the matoke, she hinted and talked about the matoke, for example, which is a very also, it's a very fragile commodity to actually transport or carry or ship or do all the things too. Thinking value addition onto some of these things that we have to be able to compete in the market. But also, Sarah and Agnes here, it's also believed that why Ugandans are not developing economically, or why Ugandans seem to be lazy, or why Ugandans are not growing at the rate that they should be growing, is because the assumption is there's a lot of food here. You wake up, come to the market, you can come to Kampala here with virtually nothing, then find something to eat and go back. When you go to economies like Kenya, you never eat what we eat here. In Kenya, you either eat ugali na sukuma wiki, mokimo, sijui nini, githeri. You can never eat the food that we eat here. Yeah. At 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, oriye mere yona. They actually call it mere yona. You know, that's now, because of the mere yona thing is why Ugandans can't even go an extra mile in many of the things that we do. Do you agree with that school of thought, or you think it's also just another excuse for us not to do the best things?
Actually, Kenyans complain that Ugandans we eat a lot. I worked with some of them.
We eat mere yona. To them it's ugali na nyama or something like that.
Yeah, but I also never accepted us being insulted. I told them, even if you wanted to eat like us, what would you eat anyway? Yeah,
yes,
we have diversity, and we need to harness that. Dr. Antonio here can tell you that one of the issues that we are struggling with globally in these whole conversations of the food system is ensuring that the population, wherever it is, has access to diverse and healthy foods. So when we still have we're still having a very rich food diversity in the country, we need to harness that and we need to promote that. And actually, we should see that we restrain ourselves from commoditizing our food systems and limiting our food families to a few of them. Like you've said, the people eat ugali and sukuma wiki. That is what is available, and it is not only them. They would have loved to eat mereyona, but their food system was interrupted so much that it cannot give the variety that we want. Of course, it is true that if you can still eat without working, then you're not motivated so much to work harder. And I think it is the reason why, until today, actually one time some eminent person was laughing at me that I work on food and said, what is there to be worked on food in Uganda? And he laughed and he said, I'm a masquerader, and he called me all sorts of names. Because in his head, he knows that food is everywhere.
In Uganda.
It is a social thing. And food, since has transited, it is no longer just a social item, it is an economic item, it is a political.
It's a
political item, it's an environmental, it's an environmental item. And that is why initially we argued that we all have to rethink the way we think about food and the entire food system.
Before the minister comes in. Yes.
You know, we have a challenge. I know people say population growth is a market for agricultural produce. But our population growth is at 3.4%, when our agricultural produce growth in agriculture is 2.5. So people are increasing more than the productivity. So we have, it could be advantage in terms of market, but it's a challenge because it puts pressure on the land use. And that leaves no available land for expansion and commercialization of agriculture. So we need to move to control population growth in this country. But away from that, are Ugandans lazy?
Are they lazy?
I do not think so. I think we do not have the deliberate efforts, you know, beyond talk, for encouraging production in this country. Everybody talks and goes home. There is no proper planning. There is no, you know, if you look at, for example, youth unemployment, the youth badge, I think most youth have met aggressive and are really struggling to find what to do. But what opportunities exist for them? If you look at smallholder farmers, you know, who has analyzed their challenges and opportunities and helped them to build on their opportunities as their comparative advantage? You know, everybody has been left to whom it may concern. We are a liberal market, so there is no deliberate effort at that level. Yeah.
Honorable Minister, you come in here and also talk about value addition.
Well, for value addition, but I will first, I think,
respond to
my sisters who were saying about the food. Like in the past, people would have granaries, and then now this is something which has faded off. You know, cultures or systems evolve. I remember the granary system when I was still young, and this would be enforced by chiefs, whereby everybody will have to grow food, and then you have to store for the time when there is less, and that's when they would actually open. They would even draw a line where they say, they come to check whether you have, or maybe picked, I can say, stealing your own food. But you have to wait until when you are told when to eat. Now, at this current time, things have changed whereby people can even store that in form of money. If I have money, I can go and buy food. And that's where we're emphasizing now fighting poverty at household level. If I can sell, like you can have, like in the pastoralists, you will sell a cow, you go and buy food. So those systems, we cannot continue saying that people should continue keeping granaries, because society evolves, and you will find that things which worked in the 1960s, in 2000, people have other ways in which they cope in terms of coping with putting food on their table, even at the time when there is scarcity. Now, on value addition, I think as government, we are doing quite a lot to invest in that, to see that communities, and I would also not agree with my sister who is saying that nothing is being done to organize youth to do. There has been a lot of skilling to prepare youth to prepare them for employment, that they have been left and nothing is being, a lot is being done. I was formerly the Minister of Energy, and we've trained a lot of youth, preparing them to go into the oil sector. All these, as government, we are aware, the population, we have more youth than the adults, and we are concerned that we have to create employment for the youth. And indeed, agriculture offers a lot of these opportunities. And that's why value addition, when you look at the NDP3, agro-processing and value addition is one of the key issues which is being prioritized. One of the things is, well, some of the groups, like you said, we have groups, you say organizing farmer groups. People have been organized. That's why you have those cooperatives, the circles. They are organized in those groups to access credit, and they are able to do that. Maybe make the cottage industries, and be able to do that. Now, all this needs a lot of effort. And I would also like to appeal to my sisters that let's look at Uganda for all of us. We are all Ugandans. So when you are blaming this, what have you done? And me, that's what I always ask myself first. What have I done as a minister before I ask another question? So we all need to take this on. And at one time, even the NGOs I normally come, I say, don't ask me questions, but tell me, what have I done? I'm now in Karamoja. And as I speak now, we already have food stored for children who would be coming to go to school. Yes. We have, I think, around 500,000 tons of maize. So if the children come back to school, I have food which will be distributed through World Food Program, and the schools will be that. In Karamoja, we had a system where the farmers were growing food, and it would be stored. We were using the facilities of World Food Program. But the only challenge came in because of the climate change. And you know, the rains this year came late. So the season, the growing season for the plants were shortened, and the drought destroyed the maize. Now this is a catastrophe. And as government, we have an emergency fund. So as I speak now, the Minister of Disaster Preparedness is preparing, but we already had food in the store. As a ministry, we had food which have been given to Karamoja. So we are preparing to buy more, and then we take. So it is not that we completely don't have, or you want to see maybe sirens here, then you say, oh, this is stored here. But as a country, we have something which we have. Like he said, maybe it is in terms of money, that money is there. And I speak, we are now, very soon food is going to be added, but we have food which is going to Karamoja.
On the issue of value addition, because I think that's also very important, how do you feel as a country that grows coffee, and we don't even have the coffee to take itself? Many people grow coffee for some other persons. You go to other economies that are getting a lot of money, benefiting from coffee, go to Germany, go elsewhere, where they don't even have a single coffee plant anywhere, but they benefit a lot from this. What are we doing about that? Because I think it also wears out our efforts as a nation. Recently, the president was talking about matoke flour, how that can actually substitute the traditional wheat. How much are we doing to that? Like Agnes just says, we the men now have started going into Ebitoke because we're now running away from the traditional cash crops of tea and coffee and all the things, now knowing that somebody can actually go into banana plantations and actually benefit from that. The issue of value addition, I think, also waters out our efforts so much. What are we doing about that to see that we can actually get there?
I think value addition, a lot has been done. Like for tea, I think a lot of processing is being done. Now for banana, government invested a lot in research, and I think we've made headway. Now the factory is supposed to be put up in Mbarara, and you know that is someone's intellectual property. If someone, a scientist, develops something, because that flour, by the way, does not have gluten, which is in wheat, so it is a very healthy product, which now, of course, the scientist has been able to say this can be able to do this. Now we are now moving to the next step of now commercializing it, the product. But of course now that is what government is going to do, and once that factory is put up, the bananas will be in. Okay. And I think many people have now seen the biscuits, the cakes, which can be made from that flour. Okay. So that is an achievement. Okay. We can now even have investors, and that's now where we are putting money in UDB, because the scientists did her work. Now it should be people who are interested in doing business to say, go to UDB, get this money, go and put up a factory to do this. So this is what we are doing as government. Okay. And now we talked about coffee. Yes, I come from an area where we grow the best coffee, that's Arabica. And up to now, I think we have not reached the level where, but as government, we are trying to see whether we can attract in an investor. We now have an industrial park in Bali. And the next is we can now attract an investor who can come in to invest and have this. Okay. And that's why when you hear the president saying, we want to have manufacturing done here. Because in the past it was, we have to agree, it was not being done. But we are now saying, manufacture from here, so that you can create more jobs for Ugandans. Okay. And then you export the products.
Well, I think we all agree that we have the potential. And I think it gets back to how we need to marshal ourselves out and utilize the potential that we have. We all agree, just like every other person says, Uganda is actually a good global food basket. We can produce enough ourselves, like you say, we can actually do that yesterday. We can produce enough ourselves, we can produce enough for the market. And we need to agree that, yes, we need to see how to up the game on our food systems. Because our time is running out. Antonio, just recommendations in the last final minutes of our program. So many concerns are coming in here. We can't exhaust all of them. People asking different questions, so many questions, those thanking you, and of course those asking from everywhere. Let's conclude this in the next minutes that we have. What are your recommendations, and what do you think we need to do going forward, as I also get to the ladies here?
I believe, I continue to reiterate that indeed you do have the huge potential for your agriculture sector to really be the push for the sustainable development of this country. We have seen that the recommendations are aligned along some tracks that we've been discussing at the national level. How we produce sufficient food for everyone, a food that is nutritious, a food that also is healthy. How we do it in a way that is, we don't harm the environment, but at the same time we create a livelihood for the youth of Uganda and attract them to see in agriculture as a business. For them to come in agriculture, not to do much of the same that their grandfathers and probably the parents did, but for them to identify the commodities that are important where they can get decent income on this commodity. We also need to do more in terms of how we build the resilience in the system. We have seen the climate, we have seen the locusts, we have seen the climate variability. we need to design a system that is resilient to this shock. Okay. So the recommendation goes along these lines for us to ensure that we continue to have a food system that is alive and provide sufficient food for everyone. Okay. We also need to create safety nets. In places where you have a shortage, in a country of plenty, the safety net should be coming to ensure that you step in to address the needs of the most vulnerables. It can be to a food storage system, it can be to a fund, but at least you have a safety net in place to address the insecurities that we see, pockets of food insecurities here and there, and even also in urban areas that needs to be addressed, and you do have the resources to do so. You have spoken in terms of value addition. I believe is the way to go. In the post-COVID era, we need to identify what are the commodities that we need to invest. We cannot invest in all of them. We have to rank and see, but also analyze where within this value chain is best. You get best value for money on your investment. Okay. As an international level, we are also pushing for the establishment of a global fund that will also leverage the investment at the country level to ensure that we have sufficient resource for the transformation of the agri-food system. And we hope the discussion in September will be another point that will re-energize the global community for an engagement and for us to stop the immorality and the indignity of having people going hungry in a planet that produces so much food to feed everyone.
It's certainly immorality, like you say. We can't go hungry. Chirabo, final recommendations.
In a few minutes from now, it will be 12th August. And every 12th day of August to celebrate the International Youth Day. Sure. And this year, the celebrations are going under the theme, Food Systems Transformation, Youth Innovation for Human and Planet Health. So for the younger people out there, congratulations once again upon celebrating the International Youth Day. The food system needs you. You're the biggest food consumers. The unfortunate bit that in Uganda, many of you are consuming food that you have not produced and you have not paid for it. And we need to address that. And we need you in the food system because you have roles to play to make it very, very efficient. And like many of our panelists have said, there is a lot of potential. But the second thing is that how I pray that I come to a panel next time that doesn't talk about the potential of the agriculture sector and the food system.
You don't want to hear that again?
We have over-talked about that potential.
But I think it's good to also re-echo it and keep saying
no, we need to see, actions
of the potential
that are tapping that potential. We have over-talked about that potential. I pray that we have a platform
we need to keep reminding ourselves about our potential.
That we have potential, we have reminded ourselves over and over again.
That's why we preach the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ every other time.
I'm telling you, at least that is my prayer, that one day
we stop the potential.
We are not talking about the potential,
and just see the potential,
but we are talking about the actions. The other thing that I need to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Minister, what is being done for the people of Karamoja? I congratulate you and I congratulate government. And I'm here to say that so many of the children in this country need that kind of programming. Because as we are talking now, 7 out of 10 of our children spend the whole day in school without a meal. So how I pray that what is being done, because now that you've been able to do it in Karamoja, it is an indicator that it is doable. So it can be done for all our...
So the potential is showing some action now.
No, I'm talking about that action.
Particular one, because you have potential in all things.
I'm talking about that action. And finally, I need to tell people that have viewed us this evening that please remember to wear the inner mask. And the inner mask is about what you eat. And don't just eat for. If you have capacity.
There is Merayuna here.
Yes.
So,
please let us labor to see that we eat adequately and we avoid foods that are going to become diseases thereafter. Because the funny thing is, you push wrong things down your gut, you suffer alone individually, but the state suffers more because government needs you to contribute to this economy. So let us labor to feed ourselves right. As we demand, the Honorable was saying, we are in it together, don't ask me, tell me what you have done. Honorable, I'm not going to build the strategic food reserves in this country. It is a constitutional obligation for this government. I will not do that, but I'll ask you to do it.
Thank you. Sarah, let's conclude it, your recommendation and final submission. In a minute.
I think what we need to do is to build the farmer-centered food systems and mobilize farmers along defined value chains and foods, the food ecosystems. Analyze their challenges and opportunities and help them capitalize on their comparative and competitive advantages, but also use technology to build resilience within the sector, but also this technology must be available and accessible to the local farmer. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Honorable Minister, finally from you in a minute.
Yeah, thank you. I think as government, I want to urge Ugandans to take advantage of the opportunities which government is putting before in terms of availing funds, like in Uganda Development Bank, availing funds in various institutions to better their lives. So we should, I think, stop sitting back and complaining, but also be aggressive to go into the money economy, because nothing comes easy. And I would also task Ugandans that, like you've heard, that we should be actually the food basket for Africa if we really worked. So my appeal is for Ugandans, listen to government and let's work hard, see that we improve on the food systems in terms of production, processing, like we've seen the challenges which occur there, then also storage and consumption, so that Uganda can be food secure come 2030. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much, the Honorable Dr. Mary Goretti Chimono Chitutu, the Minister for Karamoja Affairs. Thank you so much for having allowed to endure. At the time with us, you're on Behind the Headlines tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Antonio Guarido, the FAO country representative, for also making it here. Agnes Chirabo, the ED for Food Rights Alliance. I also want to thank you very much for making it here. And of course, Sarah, I can't thank you enough for endeavoring to be here. Even when Charles Odong-Thor couldn't make it here tonight, you are here. Charles Odong-Thor will return next week. We pray that by the grace of God, he will return safe and sound. He's well. And I also want to end this on a very good note that my club, Chelsea FC, I think is still 1-1 with... Oh, Chelsea. Oh, we are 1-1 with Villarreal, and we go to the extra time. Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us here tonight. My name is Jagenda Semakola Ziksoka. So many of you have sent your messages, concerns, you've tweeted, and we couldn't read all of you out there, but just thanking you for having endured all this time up to now. Another very good morning from me to you. God bless you as we continue inspiring Uganda for God and my country, and all of you stay blessed, and a very good night. Blessings. Thank you.
The world record has been broken by almost exactly 2 seconds. He's Joshua Cheptegei of Uganda. This is superb running.
I've shared my story with the world, with you, but you've only seen the half of it. Because to truly know and appreciate my story, you will have to see it for yourself. My home, my Uganda. From the breathtaking waterfalls of the Nile to every beautiful sunrise and sunset. From the amazing blankets of green to the priceless treasures that lie within. Along the way, I have made some unusual friends. The world-famous silverbacks. When I see them, I behold Uganda's treasures. So yes, you see me and celebrate Uganda. I assure you, there is a lot more in store. I have lived here for years, but even I am yet to see its full glory. Join me. Let's take on the Pearl of Africa together.
Are you looking for an excellent university? African Bible University is truly special, and our graduates are unique. At ABU, we offer bachelor degrees in education, business, mass communication, and biblical studies. If you want to make an impact on the next generation, apply now at www.abu.ac.ug or call us on 0706 346 587. African Bible University, teaching the treasures of God's truth.
Join us from Monday to Friday for Good Morning Uganda with me, Felix Mukunda,
Priscilla Naluoga,
Robert Chirabo,
Molen Kenyana,
Ruben Mpimba, with all the morning's essentials,
including the very latest in news, traffic,
weather and sports.
Live on TV and across all our social media platforms. Hashtag UBCGMU.
Hope you'll be setting your alarms, cause we are looking forward to seeing you then.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
That if they do not get their banner behind these journalists, they're going to be next.
On January the 4th, the British judge had ruled that Assange couldn't be extradited to America, citing concerns about his mental health and the risk of suicide in a US prison. Well, Assange remains in a British high-security prison as he's considered a flight risk and has spent the last decade either in a UK prison or the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Well, a decision on Assange's latest hearing isn't expected until the autumn. While outside the High Court, Assange's supporters were protesting against his extradition, including former opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn.
Journalism is under threat from two sources. One is state oppression of journalists, which happens in many countries in the world. That's clear what is happening there. What is also under threat for is the threat of example, whereas news corporations and huge control of most media outlets, both television, radio and print media, and they become a sort of a self-censorship on journalist behaviour, and that's equally dangerous.
Journalist Richard Medhurst watched a video stream of the hearing and says he was deeply disturbed by what he saw.
I literally did a double take. I couldn't recognize that it was Assange. He looked extremely old. You know, he's wearing a white shirt, some glasses, his hair is ruffled, and he had a tie that wasn't actually on. Just really looks completely, I mean, you know, pardon the rash assessment, he looks very awful and ill, and this is normal because the whole point of the High Court preliminary hearing today was to discuss his health, right? So we had extensive medical witness testimony during the extradition hearing at the Old Bailey back in September and October, and this was again brought up today, and it's going to be brought up again in October at the High Court, that his health is deteriorated, he's been tortured, and this is a journalist who's not serving a sentence, he's not a criminal, and he's in a maximum security prison in Britain's Guantanamo Bay. I mean, someone needs to explain that to me, what is happening, because this is completely unjust, and it's a crime against press freedoms, and it's an affront against his personal health. The most important thing about this case is press freedoms, because when you have someone who's publishing you know, work documenting war crimes from the United States in Afghanistan and Iraq, because people, again, they think this is something to do with 2016. Absolutely nothing to do with 2016. He's being charged, Julian Assange is being prosecuted by the United States because he published documents relating to Iraq and Afghanistan. He published evidence of war crimes, of kidnapping, rendition, and torture by the CIA.
High school students in the US state of Oregon will no longer have to prove they're proficient in reading, writing or mathematics in order to graduate. That's according to a new law signed by the governor. RT's Caleb Morpin has the story.
According to the bill that was signed into law in the state of Oregon last month, students, in order to graduate from high school in the state of Oregon, will no longer have to prove that they're capable of reading, writing, or performing basic mathematical operations. This is done, according to the bill's language, to help students from communities that have, quote, historically experienced academic disparities.
The testing that we've been doing in the past doesn't tell us what we want to know. We want to have kids getting a chance to do and learn and be curious about everything. And what we've been doing is stopping that curiosity.
Now, the bill, what its supporters say, is about trying to help students who are from immigrant populations or refugees who have come to the United States, who the examinations and the tests required for graduation are seen as kind of a barrier to them getting the high school diploma. Reportedly, these rules will now be in place for the next 5 years. Now, the bill was signed into law without